We're going to a city of international trade, a sponsor of the arts and a pioneer of printing and ideas. A modern city on the cutting edge and one that was fought over for centuries. We're headed to the second busiest port in Europe, the city of Antwerp. Antwerp is today the second busiest port in all of Europe, and it has been a trading center since the 1500s, when the nearby port of Bruges began to silt up and the trade shifted to Antwerp. Antwerp's glory days were very much tied to European colonization and exploitation of much of the rest of the world, as this was the port from which much of the riches of the Americas, Africa, and Asia poured in. And it was a city dominated by merchants from all over Europe, but especially from Spain. Today it remains the center of the world's diamond trades, with some 3/4 of the world's diamonds passing through Antwerp, plus a lot of illegal cargo coming through the city, making it a great site for crime dramas, for which Belgium is famous. It remains an extremely diverse and international city. The tourist area of Antwerp is fairly compact, so we can do it all in an easy day's walking tour. We're going to start at Antwerp's famous Central Station, walk along the Meer shopping district, stop at the Groenplaats Square to see Antwerp's favorite son, the painter Peter Paul Rubens, and then on to the fabulous Cathedral of Our Lady, which has dominated the Antwerp skyline since the 1500s, to the Groot Market, once the center of this great commercial city. Head down to the Plantain Museum, home to the world's oldest printing presses, and then off to the riverfront to see the remains of the old city castle. See how this great city once defended itself. Then it's up to the Church of St. Paul, boasts the work of some of Belgium's greatest artists. And finally to the Maas Museum, where we get the great views over the city. You'll probably arrive to Antwerp through the Central Station. Built in 1905, it has been voted one of the most beautiful railroad stations in the world, although it was heavily damaged during World War II, and much of what you see now is a reconstruction. On the practical side, it connects to the high-speed railroad networks, and you can get the metro here, and there is also luggage storage that you can rent if you're just visiting for the day. Stepping outside, you can see the diversity of the city, where Chocolate Nation stands right next to Chinatown. Antwerp's modern commercial glory is reflected in the 1900s pedestrian shopping area, the Meer. Along with the classic architecture, it remains a very up-to-date shopping area. The Stadsviertel Mall is located in a neoclassical exhibition hall originally opened in 1908. Like much of Europe, there are many opportunities to rent bikes, but you'll want to walk to check out great sites like this statue of Flemish painter Anthony van Dyck. Down a nondescript lane is a building that once had great commercial significance. The fabulous building behind me dates back to 1872, and this was the stock exchange for Antwerp. This was one of the great trading centers of Europe and the whole world, and this is where it took place. The building is now used to host special events, and its decor reflects a Venetian palace, with paintings depicting the worldwide reach of trade from Antwerp. And each of the many columns in this structure has a different design. Opened in 1932 with a whopping 26 floors, this building was once the symbol of Antwerp's modern commercial power. The building behind me is the Farmer's Tower, and while it doesn't look like a place that a lot of farmers could do much farming, this was the first European skyscraper built on an American style, specifically a Chicago style. And believe it or not, this was the tallest building in Europe for 20 years. Now, Antwerp, like other major Belgian cities, is undergoing a constant process of construction and improvement, so things often are not going to look like the postcards. The center of Antwerp is the Groot Market, or the Great Market. It reflects the powers of this mercantile city, the guilds that ran the professions, and the town that regulated trade. We are here at the famous Groot Market, and this was the major market square of Antwerp. On one side, behind me, are the guild houses, where all the different guilds of merchants had their headquarters. And the fabulous building on this side is City Hall. And although it's the City Hall, you can see it's dedicated to international commerce. There are flags from all over the world. India, Panama, representing the trade of this great hub. The building dates to 1564, the glory days when Antwerp usurped its rival of Bruges and became the commercial powerhouse. The monument at the center celebrates the legendary hero Brabo. The legend states that the evil giant Antigone hid in the river and collected tolls from people who passed by. Gives you an idea what a commercial city like Antwerp would consider to be a great evil. Anyway, those who could not pass had their hands cut off by the giant. So to get back at him, Brabo severed the giant's hand, and here we see him preparing to throw it in the river. And in fact, if you go around the back of the statue, you can see the bloody stump of the giant's arm. Beside the Groot Market is Groenplatz, which pays tribute to one of Antwerp's favorite citizens. Antwerp was famous as an artist town, and none was bigger than the man behind me, Peter Paul Rubens. From behind Rubens, we can hear the bells of the Cathedral of Our Lady, Antwerp's largest church. This church still dominates views of the city. The delicate decoration reflects Antwerp at the height of its power. There were plans to make this the largest church in all of Europe, but unfortunately, history intervened. Antwerp's grandest structure is the Great Cathedral. This building behind me dates back to the 1300s, but because this city was on the front lines of the wars between the Protestants and the Catholics, between Protestant Dutch and the Catholic Spanish, who fought for control of this area for centuries, this building suffered from that. It was gutted and looted several times by both sides, most recently by Napoleon's forces. The elaborately carved doorway depicts the Last Judgment. Here we see Jesus, and below him is Saint Michael, weighing the souls, people who are about to go off to either heaven or hell. The towering interior is designed to remind us of the grandeur of God. Now, much of the elaborate Catholic decorations have been stripped out over the centuries during the wars against the Protestants. So much of what we see here has been added later on, like this wood-carved pulpit, which actually dates from the 1700s. This also reflects the power of colonialism and commerce, as the four figures seen here represent the four continents as they saw them. A very elaborate series of wood carvings stands on the left wall. These 24 figures represent the 12 apostles interspersed with the 12 stages of moral development. The female figure that we see here progresses through vanity and anger, and finally, when she is much older, achieves virtue. In fact, fine woodworking is a hallmark of this cathedral, particularly in the choir section, where the elite of Antwerp would have had their places reserved. As this is the Cathedral of Our Lady, the side chapel is dedicated to Mary. But most of the artwork focuses on the life of Jesus, and this cathedral is designed to showcase Antwerp's status as a great center of art. In the city of Peter Paul Rubens, the main attraction here are the paintings by Rubens himself. They depict Christ's crucifixion and resurrection, and in true Renaissance style, depict everyone involved something like ancient Greek Olympic athletes. And it continues to showcase art, reminding us, as in this statue, that balancing the Christian life is not easy. A short distance from the cathedral is the Plantin Moretus Museum, the headquarters of one of the most important printers of Europe in the 1500s. And yes, you'll probably not be surprised to hear that in this great city of commerce and trade, dissemination of ideas and was another big industry. Christophe Plantin both lived and worked here in what was a huge family business. The museum contains not only some of the oldest printing presses in the world, but Plantin's extensive collection of some of the oldest printed books in Europe. This is the actual workroom where the books were printed. And why are those machines bolted to the ceiling like that?
Okay. Very good, very good. Do you see it moving? That is why the printing press is anchored in the ceiling. Because if Helen would do this 10 times, the printing press would be outside.
This demonstration is the highlight of the tour, where you get to see exactly how materials were printed back in the 1500s.
If you are really quiet, you could actually hear the paper coming off the ink letters. You're going to hear it very good because it's close by. Can you hear that? Well, there you go.
This press is a replica of the oldest one in the world. The real ones sit at the end of the workroom. These are the two oldest printing presses in the world. This is the typesetter's tray, and the capital letters were kept in the upper part and the regular letters in the bottom part, which is where we get the phrase uppercase and lowercase letters. Among the books printed here is the world's first atlas, many Bibles and hymnals, and this Bible that took 5 years to produce, which is written in 5 languages: Latin, Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Syriac, all of which Plantin needed typesettings for. Antwerp is foremost a port city, and it's a short walk from the old town center to see the river where this takes place. Antwerp is the second busiest port in Europe after Rotterdam, and this has been a place that people have wanted to capture throughout the years. Hitler wanted it so badly, that's what the Battle of the Bulge was about. Sitting right next to the water, Hetstein Castle is what is left of what were once the city walls. This structure gives an idea of how serious and deadly trade could be and how many people wanted to take control of this city over the centuries. This structure, it actually dates back to the 800s, and parts of it which are remaining today date back to the 1200s. And you can see this strange statue out front. The statue lends itself to all kinds of dirty jokes, and its title, the Long Whopper statue, doesn't really help matters. The Scheldt River was the key waterway of Antwerp trade, and if you want to travel the river, you can take the very appropriately named De Waterbus. Today, most of the port activity has moved outside of the city, but these leftover dock areas from the 19th century give an idea of what a fancy port this was in its day. This building is a reminder that even tiny Belgium got involved in colonialism. For 50 years, Belgium controlled the Belgian Congo, which was 80 times the size of Belgium itself. And even by the standard of other colonial powers, its treatment of the Congo was incredibly bad. This building, which was a warehouse for colonial trade, is now, believe it or not, a restaurant. Also towering above Antwerp is the Church of St. Paul. The towering St. Paul's Church stands behind me. This church originally dates back to 800, but that church is now gone. In the 1200s, this was a Dominican monastery, which it remains today, but the main structure we see here dates to the 1600s as a dominant building that can be seen from far away, but it's hard to get a good look at it because the neighborhood is so densely packed. Like the Church of Our Lady, the massive interior reminds us of the grandeur of God, and the fact that the city could boast more than one church of this size so close together testifies to its importance. Being a proud Belgian church, however, there are a collection of paintings by the masters. Along the side wall are paintings by the masters depicting the 15 mysteries of the Rosary. Beneath these are the wooden carved confessionals, which are the masterworks of the Flemish sculptor Pieter Verbruggen. The church organ dates to the 1600s and had over 3,000 pipes, although much of it has been damaged and repaired over the centuries. Relics of the saints are displayed throughout the church, although modern forensic testing has shown that none of these bones actually come from the time period they're supposed to. The treasury holds some of the most valuable items, and those vault doors are not just there for show. These monstrances were used to hold the communion bread, and in this city of diamonds, the prize in the collection is this one, which has over 500 diamonds in it. Art was often used in these days of low literacy to teach lessons to the congregation. A series of paintings depicts the Battle of Lepanto, in which the Christian fleet defeated the Ottomans for control of the Mediterranean, as involving sail vessels from a later era and taking place right outside the patio of the Pope, who was able to watch the action. It's not meant to be accurate, but to teach the basic ideas. This active church still has a lot of volunteers on staff who are there to answer your questions or to give you a tour. You can go underneath the church to see the catacombs and even see the modern climate control system, which is necessary to keep the humidity and temperature at the right level to preserve the artworks. Outside is a collection of 63 statues known as the Calvary, which culminate in a replica of the Holy Sepulchre, which shows angels looking on and weeping. The entire garden was meant to be a place where people could contemplate the crucifixion. The surrounding area was once a harbor, but has now been filled in. As a residential area, it shows how well the city blends modern buildings with the old style. And located here was one of the most powerful guilds, the Butcher's Hall, which is now a museum. This is St. Paul's Square, and beyond this is the famous red light district, where I imagine they have a lot of traffic jams. Hopefully those lights turn green at some point. We're going to skip over the red light district, but this is basically what goes on there. To the north of the old town is the MAS Museum. This museum offers the best views over the city, and the rooftop is free to visit. Up on the 10th floor panorama, you get a complete 360 view over the city of Antwerp. It's the best place to see the history and the present of this city. You can see the old town with the Church of Our Lady and St. Paul's and modern apartment towers and windmills in the background. The historic waterfront along the Scheldt River, and then north of the city, the modern port. And then the modern industrial city with its containers and windmill farms. And it's up north into that area where we're about to go next. The Red Star Line Museum is in a building that was once a terminal for ships going to America. From 1873 to 1935, Antwerp was one of the biggest ports for European immigrants to the United States. It was here that passengers were inspected, deloused, and screened before going on. The museum also shows some of the tough conditions they faced in cramped ships. It provides interesting perspective in a city that is now an arrival port for millions of immigrants coming to Europe. And as we leave Antwerp, join us for the rest of Belgium and travels through Europe. See you soon.